Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Good morning, Dana. How are you?
I'm good. I'm super excited last week's, what we talked about was like one of my favorite ones yet. So I'm excited about the validity today.
Yeah, so we're continuing our conversation around what I've shared with you is I consider my magic formula. If I was sent anywhere to build anything, this is the formula I would use. It's the same formula I use to build my real estate sales team to over 200 transactions a year. And so I want everybody to go back to their school days and think of this formula. And I want you to write the big letter R and then a plus sign and then a big letter, capital letter V, and then another plus sign and another capital V, and then draw a line under that. And I believe this is what you would call an algebra formula. I'm not sure. And then a capital letter T underneath that.
I was going to say, this is a much better.
Yeah, Jimmy said, yeah, that's an algebra formula. I was like, is that an algebra formula?
I was going to say, this is a much better formula than the ones we did learn in school.
Oh, T means denominator, but he's getting way too complicated for me for that. Just do what I said, put that formula down. So what that stands for is relationships. You got to build some relationships, plus your validity, plus someone else's value gaps, and then over time, because the time is the one thing we can't predict on how long anything will take before someone makes that decision to do business with you, to join you, to do whatever it is you're wanting them to do. So last week we dug really into relationships. So this week we want to really get into validity. And here's what I say about validity. Validity is something everybody has, but nobody thinks they do.
Yeah.
When I bring this up, when I teach in one of my classes on this, most people get stuck right here at validity. They're like, well, I don't really know what my validity is. I think validity is something that's so easy for you that you don't see it.
Mm.
You know, it seems simple, so you don't understand why everybody else, doesn't just, you think, well, it's not that big a deal because it's so easy for me. So validity kind of comes from your life experiences. It helps form who you are today to make you valid. Your language, your experiences, your failures, your successes, all of those become a person's validity. And the reason validity is important is because whoever this tribe of people that we want to build a relationship with is, who we want to be a hero to, like we talked about last week,
Yep.
They will not open the door to a deep enough relationship if we don't have enough validity. So that's why validity is super important. It's what's going to allow the door to open to those relationships.
Yep.
So I'll give you an example from long ago when I was beginning my sales career. I was only in my early 20s and I probably looked like I was about 17. I hope that works, keeps working as I get older. But anyway, I would go to people and they would think I was kind of young. So I had to learn how to speak in such a way that it gave me validity, that they would overlook how young I looked and think, man, she knows what she's talking about.
Yep.
And so I would do things like I would learn how to figure out how to tell the age of a roof, how to tell if the hot water heater needed replacing, things that would not normally be something that they would expect to come from a 17-year-old, right? And so those are the ways that I use validity to help them have confidence in having a relationship with me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been having these conversations for the last 2 years with Sarah on my team because, she was 19 when she got started in real estate. And she's like, I don't know if all these other agents are going to respect me. And I'm like, listen, you go be the local expert and know everything there is to know about those neighborhoods, know everything there is to know about the economy, about everything. And you'll be valid to them because you will know more than some of them will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, when someone hears you speak and talk, they're going to know real quick whether you know what you're talking about or not. And that's validity. The other thing about validity that people forget to use is to use other tools that you have available to you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we think, well, it's only dependent on us. But the truth is, I could use another person's validity, and my connection with that other person gives me validity. So let's say, for example, if I was trying to get in a relationship with someone, Dana, and they were, single, not married, no kids, and they were wondering, well, how can I do real estate or whatever? You might be someone that I'd bring into the conversation. In your case, I'd probably bring, let's say, for example, somebody's like, I really want to go far in this business. I want to not just sell real estate. I want to do all these amazing things. Well, you'd be a perfect person for me to bring in and use you to create more validity for me, because when you speak to that person and they hear your story, it's going to match theirs, where they want to go, their journey, and that creates validity. So does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I'm thinking of all the times I've used Linda McKissick for validity in my conversation.
There ain't nobody too out far reach for us to use if we need their validity, right?
I know.
But stories are also create validity. So you learning and memorizing people's stories. When I was selling real estate at a high level, I used people's story of when they didn't reduce their price and how they got less.
Yeah.
So many times I used stories about how they picked someone else who was way cheaper and it turned into a nightmare. And so I would use testimonials as validity. I would use letters from other people saying we should have went with her the first time, blah, blah, blah. All that becomes your validity with whatever you're trying to do. And the more you grow and the more you learn, the more validity you're going to actually have. Mm-hmm. So to me, validity is something that's kind of not thought about much. And people don't realize the more you grow your validity, the more doors are going to open for greater and bigger and better relationships. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'm telling you, there is a lot of power in validity. And so I think this is one of the best ones to talk about, honestly, because I've had so many instances where I didn't even really know, probably. So I agree with what you're saying. I didn't even really probably know that it was validity that helped that situation, but it did. And yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking back even to selling real estate. I mean, I was super young too. And so a lot of those things that you did, I remember I used to like shout from the rooftops testimonials. That was like my thing all the time.
Yeah.
Just to be able to become valid. And then even moving into leadership, I mean, that's a whole nother ball game compared to selling real estate every day and becoming valid in that. A lot of it, to me, I think takes consistency too, because when you're consistent with it, then you become more valid in people's eyes, I feel like.
Yeah. And I think, you have to think through what causes, think of the people that you know that are really good at relationships and or great leaders, and what are some of those attributes that those people have. And so one of the first things that comes to mind for me is a person that listens.
Yeah.
So learning how to listen and truly listen and understand someone is probably one of the greatest forms of validity anybody could give, and anybody can do that. Yeah. Right? But it's such a rare commodity. But when I think about it, over the years, learning how to do our CV process and learning how to do a personality assessment on someone and be able to validate that with that person. In other words, help them understand who they are more. That exercise alone has probably created me more validity than anything I can think of, because by me choosing to master that process and learn how to administer it at a high level has opened more doors for more deep relationships. And here's the cool part about it. I get more letters from people and notes from people saying, man, you really got me. You really understood me. You really helped me see things about myself that I'd either forgotten or I didn't even remember to focus on. And so, sometimes we think it's all about what we can do, but sometimes it's what can I do to become the person who helps that person understand who they are and get what it is they want in life. I love Zig Ziglar's, and when we get to the value gap, I'll tell you, it's my favorite quote by him, but it's the way you get what you want in life is help enough other people get what they want. And so one highest form of validity is learning how to do that. Mm-hmm. How do I take the focus off me? And, when I started in real estate sales, I thought it was all about me. Yeah. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And then I realized it's nothing about me. It's all about them. We've always heard the saying, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. They want to know what's in it for them. All those things are true. And the better you craft your ability to help them with that, the more validity you're going to have.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so,
I'm just thinking right now, Linda, of how I just interviewed Pam Bornhorst, and an agent that came over with us, and the very first thing she said, and I don't know if you got to watch that yet or not, but
to work on my computer, I need you to send me a different way.
Okay, I'll send it to your phone. You've got to watch it. The very first thing that she said, I think I asked her, what made you take such a big, scary commitment? And she said, well, Linda did. And I said, well, how did Linda do that? And she said, well, she just asked me questions, and I think her exact words were, she said, she pulled out of me that I always wanted to own a real estate office, and I never had. And I thought that it was too late. I thought I'd been in the business too long. And she said, and honestly, she said, I don't know why, but I just believed every word she said. And so I was laughing to myself, because I was thinking, you were valid to her. And that, I mean, honestly, she's in her, like, this was like her God-given ability. I feel like she's in her stride.
Oh, and that gives me chills to even hear you say that, because the beautiful thing about this is to help someone become their best and do something that was born inside of them that she lived her way to do. That gives me I have way more joy than she could ever have over this.
Yeah.
So these aren't tactics or things you learn to get people to do something. Because remember, none of us are good enough to make anybody do anything.
Nope.
But to have the joy, to have the validity and the ability to do that, is all by deciding to learn a skill that will help other people figure out who they are and who they were born to be and what natural gifts and talents they have. I'm going to tell you, just give me this all day long for the rest of my life, Dana. I'll be a happy camper.
Yeah. Well,
nothing gives me more joy.
You listened to her. I mean, you built the relationship, and then you were valid, and you really listened to her. Then you found her value gaps, and then you spent time with her. Literally, it's the perfect example of this formula. And we watched you do it, and everybody do it over and over again. And it's just crazy that, I don't know, when people think that there's like some magic pill to success. I mean, this is like one of the best things we've ever talked about on the podcast. It's honestly one of the best things I've ever learned. And I think people don't even know that they're doing it, but they are.
Well, and the hardest part, I'm going to tell you, here's the thing. This is a learned skill.
Yeah.
I'm a high driver. I've got ADD, and it's taken me years to learn how to, when I first started doing it years ago, we've done this for years. This process that we call career visioning, I'll do a sidebar and talk about that in a minute, because it's a great process to do this with people. But years ago when we learned this, I'm going to be honest with you, Dana, I thought it was this magic thing that we had been given that was going to magically make people be the right people, and whatever opportunity I had, them just jump in it. And then I learned over the years is, no, this is really a self-discovery process for them and for us.
Yep.
And if it's a right match, it just will magically come together. But if it's not, that's a magical thing too for both of us, right? So in the beginning, I saw this as some kind of magical thing that we could take people through that would, make them take the role we wanted them to take, or, make them be the right fit. And I had to, once I let go of all that, and I realized, no, this is truly just learning how to help someone go through a process and learn to listen for who they really are and who they've been their whole life. I actually enjoy the process now better since I've learned to do that than I ever did when I thought it was some kind of just thing I was doing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And so all this career visioning is a tool that will help you learn how to create validity with people, because it's going to help you learn a process to take someone through to help them self-discover, because sometimes we forget who we are.
Yeah.
We forget to listen to who our soul says we are. I was on like 18 Zooms last week. And one of my times I was on a Zoom, I told him the story about when I was 18, that my soul was the first time I realized my soul woke up and started talking to me. And I said I was 18 years old. I'd always had two jobs, at Baskin Robbins or Dairy Queen or somewhere at a food place. And I had those jobs because I was a hard worker, and I liked having my own money. And if I didn't work, there was going to be no money, because I lived with my sister and brother-in-law, and they couldn't afford to give me any. So I learned that working allowed me to have my own money. And when I got out of high school, those jobs all had flexible schedules. I'd go in after school, I'd work till 10 o'clock at night, I'd close the place down, go home, go to bed, go back to school the next morning. And I learned that, you know, those were just jobs that gave me extra money, but they had flexibility. I didn't pay attention at the time. But what we did was, when I got out of high school, a lady I'd worked with at one of the Dairy Queens said to me, she said, you know, my husband works at General Telephone and he can get me a job, get you a job there. And I thought, okay, good. That's what you do. You turn 18. No one in my family had gone to college, so college wasn't an option. And college wasn't an option. And so I said, well, maybe it's to get a job. So I got the job and I went in at 8 and I got off at 5. And I was so miserable, Dana. I thought someone had cut my soul out of me because I hated that restriction of going in at 8 and getting off at 5. So I always like to say I then got into real estate where I went in way before 8 and got off way after 5. But it was something different. I was doing something for me. There was unlimited opportunity. That was the first time my soul said, hey girl, freedom is important to you and it's going to be important to you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So anytime you feel like you're in a trap or you're stuck, you're going to start fighting your way out of it.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I think our soul listens to who we are, but we get so busy and so clouded with everything. That's why I love the career visioning process, because you can take people through that and they can wake up and see. And honestly, part of what they're going to wake up and see is what their validity is. Because what Pam didn't understand is her validity was in serving and helping other people. And not that she doesn't do that selling real estate, but she could take that to the next level by helping other people that were coming along the way of real estate sales also. So to me, it's really, and this is one of those things where you kind of have to just start thinking about it, and now it's going to show up everywhere. It's like a red car. When you buy a red car, you don't see any red cars until you buy one, and 14 people have the same red car. This is the same way with this stuff. It's what I like to say in fierce conversations. Once you know this, you can't pretend you don't, and you'll start to see it in your life. You'll start to say, oh, that's probably validity. You know, and so I think learning to listen for that and find it is a great gift, and learning to help other people find theirs.
That's exactly what I was just getting ready to say, Linda. It's crazy because once you kind of understand what your validity is, it's so much easier to help other people find what theirs is, and to even like give them that little like nudge or push to, hey, here's how you can do it, or here's what you really are valid in. And I think it just, yeah, I don't know. I can remember thinking all the time, like I didn't feel like I had validity in anything. And it's just funny how it's when you start to focus on it, you can see it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally. I get it. What about some of the things, what are some of the things you've done over the years that you think that naturally eventually gave you validity? Maybe if you didn't even think about it at the time.
Yeah, I think definitely real estate was one of them. I think starting in and selling, and I became valid as a great realtor. And that really was kind of the key. That was the opening start to validity for a lot of other things, because I think as people, it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of how in the one thing it says, like, you let that next natural domino fall. And that's really kind of what happened, because I think being valid in real estate actually led the next domino to fall for me to get into a leadership role, because I had validity in selling real estate and validity with other real estate agents. And then when I moved into the leadership role as a team leader, I had never recruited anything or anybody in my life. I had zero validity in that whatsoever. But at the time, that's what I thought. But now that I look back on it, I think the reason I started and was kind of, had a good run with recruiting from the beginning was because I was valid to those other agents, because I'd sold real estate with them for 10 years. And at the time, I never even thought about that. So I think it's kind of like they naturally knock down the next domino. And then being able to succeed in a leadership role gave me validity to continue to keep doing more and more and more, and the more dominoes that fell. So now that I'm really kind of actually saying that out loud and talking about it, I think that they naturally kind of next knocked over the next one, and the validity grew each time. I don't know. Does that make sense? I feel like that's kind of how that's happened now that I think about it. I think it all started with real estate.
So true. And as you're saying that, I'm also thinking, the mentors that we've picked along
Oh,
the way have really molded and our language and what we could teach to other people. The books we've read, you and I both are avid readers, and just being able to take that information and then pour it into other people kind of creates
yeah.
a validity also.
Well, I think too, in the areas that maybe what I didn't feel that I was valid in, I did whatever it took to become valid in that area. So whether that was mentors or books or researching or stories or finding, I mean, just anything to be able to grow your validity. And you said something earlier that I wrote down, that a lot of times we become valid through our failures and our experiences. And I've had a lot of those too. And believe it or not, the failures also can make you valid. You just have to search for it and see those through there. But one of my favorite quotes is people, what is it? People admire you and look up to you from your successes, but they connect with you through your weaknesses or your failures. And so a lot of times I think even if you may have had a failure, gosh, that's still going to create more validity because people are going to connect with you through it.
Yeah. And sometimes people want to hide those instead of realize that you might help someone because otherwise Ma was saying, they don't compare your insides to someone else's outsides.
Yep.
They actually look at your outsides. They don't look at the insides, the limiting beliefs you have, the things like that. So being willing to share some of those also kind of opens the door a little bit deeper, because they feel like, they can see themselves in your failures. They can see their own failures inside your failures.
Yeah, I think it strengthens the connection between you and another person for sure.
Yeah. So give me an example. You mentioned something about in the past, if you didn't know about something, you worked at it to grow your validity. Give me an example of something where you didn't really feel like you had validity, but you worked to grow that validity.
So I remember when I took the team leader role and I started recruiting other agents, or influencing, I don't know, I don't love the word recruiting, but building relationships with other agents to have them have a better life and make more money. And like I said, I had never recruited anybody or anything. And so, I mean, for months, every person that I knew that had succeeded at that at a high level, I called and asked them a ton of questions, or I got on the phone with them, or I tried to figure out what they were doing that worked for them. I read every book I could get my hands on about negotiations. And I remember I read Never Split the Difference. And that was like when it very first came out. That was one of the ones that helped me big time. But anything I could do to figure out, and honestly, it wasn't just in the real estate career. I would look to other people who had built like successful Stella and Dot. I remember I spoke with a lady who built a really successful Stella and Dot business by being one of the top recruiters in that company. So just being able to connect with and learn from other people who had already done that at a really high level. And I kind of a little bit became obsessed with it, honestly. And then I quickly found out that the best way to be able to do that was just through relationship building. And so then I would just think of ways that I could become valid to them. So I can remember every single time an agent would join our office, I would have a big video to do. Like I would start a video and say, we're so excited and blah, blah, blah. And here's why they came. And so eventually after a few of those, then I became valid to the other people because I kind of created my own validity through just telling the stories and the testament and having the testimonials of it. And I think that was, honestly, I still do that in every aspect in every one of the businesses that we have or that we do. I just think that that's so important because it creates such a validity. And honestly, most people are, when they see somebody else do something, it's like kind of their first thing is, well, why'd you do it? Well, what are you doing? Well, what's working for you? And so getting the story, speaking of that, another book, how to build your story brand. I think it's Donald Miller. I mean, man, I've studied anything and everything I could of Donald Miller because to me, telling a story is like at the top of everything with how we can become valid, how we can build relationships, how we can grow our businesses. I mean, he or she who tells the best story wins. And
yeah, so true. Yeah. And it's going to attract the relationships that you want to be with. So you got to make sure that, that's why it's an authentic story, because authentically you're going to attract the relationships that you want to be in relationship through your brand and your story.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're about out of time here. So I just kind of want to wrap it up a little bit with, I think if people are stuck with their validity, one good thing that they could do this week is they could ask other people.
Yeah,
remember when we did the class Unique Ability? One of the things that if you did it beforehand, you sent out letters to everybody and you asked them what they saw as your unique abilities. Because sometimes, again, we don't see it. We're too close to it. But I think if you struggle this week saying, well, I don't make a list of what you think your validity already is. And then maybe what's some validity you want to grow, because you know it would open doors to the kind of relationships and people that you want to build a deeper relationship with. And then
that's one of my favorite exercises, honestly, I've ever done. And I struggled with it in the beginning. I was like, oh, I hate to ask these people to write something about, send me something. But honestly, people see things in you that you don't see in yourself a lot of times. And that's a really powerful exercise, is to ask other people. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it helps because, again, you sometimes can't see it. So this week, as you begin to list the things that you think that make you valid, I would also make a list of things you want to learn more about to become valid in those areas, so that you can open some other doors to relationships. And then also ask other people around you that are closest to you, what do you think is some of my validity? What are the things that maybe they're so easy for you can't see? And just ask a few other people, and you should get a common answer from several people. And that will help you kind of trigger your own thoughts around what your validity might be.
Yeah, those are great ideas.
So Dana, any last thoughts you want to leave everyone with before we close today?
I don't think so. I think this is just one that I think a lot of people don't think about. And so I would just say, do those action items that you gave, because that's a huge first start. And then just start to think about it, because the more that you can become valid in something, the more success you're going to have in it. I mean, that's just a proven thing. When you see people are really valid in something, that's when they grow. So I'm so glad we're doing this still. I think this is so helpful. It's refreshing my memory on a ton of stuff.
Yeah. And when you take the list from last week of who you want to build a relationship with, ask yourself the question, what validity do I have currently to do that? And what validity will I still need to do that? So if you make your list of who you want to be a hero to in your relationships from last week, then this week, ask yourself, how am I already valid to deepen those relationships? And then what do I still need to become valid in to help build those relationships?
Yep. Love that.
Awesome. So remember, if you have a question or a challenge or something you'd like for Dana and I to help you with, or if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate. And be sure and subscribe to our podcast. We'd love for you to give us a review if you love the podcast. We love reviews. And the best thing you can do for Dana and I as a compliment is to pass this podcast along to someone that you feel like would benefit from listening to these conversations. So Dana, I guess I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. I'll see you then.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.